it last time, but I don't see it anywhere, I think.
I don't think we posted. I think we didn't say we were going to post it. You know,
But where this recording is?
I just put it on my hard drive. I have a folder, all the different.
Okay.
You know, the YouTube translation is getting a lot better. Like, you know, we did our benefits of the empathy circle, you know, last time.
Yes,
And
I do that. I use those subtitles to sometimes to understand what somebody says. So it's very useful. For me, it's genius.
Yeah, it's getting a lot better. So actually, I did kind of transcripts of all the benefits, you know, from our other group, and posted those. So you probably saw those.
So
However, sometimes he doesn't understand what he's saying.
But it's getting better. Yeah.
I pasted what notes I have into the Google Doc for me.
Okay. Do you want to review it? Just go through it.
Sure. So, so the first statement, in a culture of empathy, people respond to differences and conflict with a desire and skills to pursue understanding and to create solutions that attempt to meet everyone's needs. I think that's very consistent with what other people have said. But I do think, so for me, having an empathic, being empathic or having a empathic stance or making an empathic response to whatever happens in life means responding with curiosity and a desire to understand. I think that's a basic difference between that and responding with evaluating the rightness or wrongness of what's happening, or responding with trying to fix what's happening, or jumping to conclusions and assuming that you know what's happening. And then a culture of empathy looks for empathic values and practices in existing cultures and acknowledges them and brings them forward. This is kind of the Charter of Compassion way of looking at how do we make large-scale change? How do we scale change? So rather than, and I talked about this in our first meeting too, rather than creating something and expecting lots of people to adopt it, expressing a set of values, and some people will adopt it, but also encouraging other communities and other groups to look for those values in their own culture and what practices demonstrate those values, and to bring those forward within their own culture rather than thinking that they're going to adopt our culture, you know, whatever we describe. Sorry about this answering machine thing. If I wasn't talking, I would just mute my microphone. But
we get a lot of those calls.
Yeah, fortunately, there's no message being left. Okay. Yeah. So then the word innovation, not sure what that means. Not only one approach, use all approaches. So yeah, I think that's a good principle. There's not just one way, but we want lots of different ways to implement. And then it's an ever process, not permanent, can be changed. It's dynamic, not fixed. I think Carolina and I both talked about this in the first time we talked, viewing it as evolving. I think everyone talked about that, actually. And empathy helps create clarity and it helps solve problems internally and externally. So both internal struggles and external things in the world. And I think one of the things about empathy too, maybe this is about culture of empathy, is that a culture of empathy maybe trusts that when people are listened to and understood and seen, that they can find their own solutions to their problems, or they will ask if they need help, and that's one of the powerful things about a culture of empathy, is that rather than people going around evaluating what's wrong with everyone and everything and trying to fix it or demanding that it be fixed, it's a stance that if people need understanding, they need to be seen and understood and empathized with, and that if we do that, people will find better choices and better solutions than the ones they're using. Yeah, so I'll stop there.
I know you had sent something that I had posted, and maybe if you look through your emails, I was looking for it. I don't know what happened to it. It could be that I created a shared Google Doc, and I was going to move it into the Google Doc, and somehow it didn't move because it was I thought a real interesting paragraph that you'd kind of written up. So
it's not the first one. It's not the first.
No, it was.
I remember we were discussing your text.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It looks like maybe I kind of deleted that by accident, but somehow I think you'd sent it. I thought maybe it was like an email. I've been looking through the old emails. I haven't been able to find this. I don't know what happened to that.
Okay, is this it? Hang on.
I think we were sharing the screen, discussing a low point of view, so we can't find it in the recording.
No, it would be a nightmare to look through.
So is it this? So I just pasted it into the top of my document. Intention. The Empathy Circle's intention is to work towards creating a culture of empathy, which means for each person to feel heard and understood to their satisfaction, also to foster a mutually constructive relationship of mutual listening, openness, trust, care, and support. Is that
I don't think that was.
I don't think those are my words, actually. I think someone else wrote those, and I put them in a document because I like them.
Well, I'll look again because that's not it. There was something else. We had discussed it. So I'm sorry I don't know if I caused that or what, but.
Okay, I can look one other place to see if I have any other documents.
It might be in an email too. But.
Yeah, I'm not finding it right now.
Okay, does anyone else want to go, or jump in too?
I do have a paragraph on why the empathy circle works. Is that what you were thinking of?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I thought it was specifically on the empathy, culture of empathy.
Okay. All right, well, I'm happy to move on.
Okay. Someone else want to go?
Okay, I'll go.
Okay.
So there are two things. I mean, one of the things in this is that I'm looking to sort of organize the information. Like some of it is, what's a visioning, so I'm flexible, see what the product comes out to be. But as far as I'm, my opinion is like a visioning is a broad vision. And then the empathy circle is a tool to kind of achieve that. And that incorporates, there's not just one way and things like that Lou said, which I think is very important. And so then I looked at it and I was reading what I was saying. So generally vision statements are kind of short and, and then kind of broad. So that's what I tried to do. And then I kind of looked at it from the top down and the bottom up. So I'm looking at what would a culture of empathy, how would it view me? And then how would I view myself within a culture of empathy? What are my kind of rights and responsibilities? So this is what I came up with based upon, major topics that were talked about last time. So let's see if I can share. Okay.
Is this something other than what's on your page, Bill?
No, that's what's on my page, I
Okay.
guess. Okay, yeah, here it is. Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So I just started top down, and this is sort of like a kind of a thought experiment. And because I think that we have a lot of creative information, but we need to kind of organize it. How do we organize it? So basically, I said, a culture of empathy respects our common humanity. And that kind of, I felt, addressed the issue about there's common humanity. The people in the Southern Hemisphere need to eat and breathe, so do we. It also leaves room for the fact that our experience up here as privileged people is much different, and we need to kind of address it. But somehow there's common humanity there. And I think a culture of empathy would have to, use that as a core. It prioritizes mutuality. I read what Edwin said about mutual empathy. To me, it was Lou brought up mutuality. If we went with mutual empathy, that's fine with me. It seemed redundant, but actually, from reading what you were saying in the article, it seems it's not as redundant as I think it is. So that's just a matter of aesthetics. But in other words, it's a two-way street, or how many streets and people there are. A culture of empathy values truth and openness, and this is from Carolina's and things. And, and that's pretty self-explanatory. In other words, you feel good, you feel like you're really trying to do and be harmonized with the community, so therefore you can be truthful and open. A culture of empathy supports each person's heroic journey through life, knowing that an individual's growth supports the whole community. And this is where it gets to, the difference between individualism and communal stuff. Each extreme, I think, is bullshit. And that I certainly had a lot of kids who were told that they were nothing. And every cell in my body says no, that we're all, beautiful entities or whatever, and that we're here to do something. And so as we help each other, as the society helps us, recognizes that hero and heroine in each one man, woman, and child, and supports that then naturally supports the community. People feel more fulfilled. It naturally occurs. Then a culture of empathy listens to and respects the biosphere. And this is what I added a little bit later. But I think that we need to expand empathy to the natural world. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know, biosphere is a bit technical. Maybe there might be, life or something else. But I definitely kind of just wanted to make sure that we're not just talking about people here, but we have to take that sense of empathy and listen to the environment and, things like that too. And then from what's my responsibility? So then as a empathic citizen, I search for my common humanity with others. In other words, the society of empathy, the culture of empathy, holds that as a core belief that there's a common humanity. And then I, as a person, my responsibility is to try to make that connection with others and find that common humanity. As an empathic citizen, I make sure to consider mutuality in all my actions. How my actions are affecting others. Yes, I have these needs. I should, fulfill them. That's not bad. But how I do it and how that affects others is a big deal. So I have to consider mutuality. And as an empathic citizen, I will model truth-telling and openness. Pretty self-explanatory. As an empathic citizen, I know my greatest fulfillment lies in working with harmony in others. So just as a culture of empathy wants to support me in my heroic journey as an individual, I know that my greatest, gifts and fulfillment is done through harmony, harmonizing with a culture of empathy in my fellow men and my environment. And that's the next one. I seek to listen to the biosphere and support a thriving ecosystem. The other thing I saw when I to Carolina is like, rejecting any institutional structure. I'm actually certainly a dogmatic institutional structure, or inflexible. I certainly think there are a lot of criticisms with that. But just like when, you were talking about, I know there's this opportunity of how to organize us into action, that's a structure. And so I prefer a flexible structure that, and say, well, that's it. So a kind of blanket, no certification, no this, no that. I don't know, certification may be going too far, but sort of like competencies or, some sort of shared, structure or shared belief structure, I think is important. And then I'm looking to put this in structuring, establishing goals. And basically what I'm seeing, two things is like here in the vision, I'm talking about the culture of empathy. And then the next part is the empathy circle and how as a tool then that might be implemented. And I do also believe it's important to put some structure to that, some bones to that. I think there already are, but I think to illustrate that, because what's happening is that because it's easy and you're not requiring anything, you're saying, okay, do two, which is fine. It's not necessarily criticism, but then that leads to people say, oh, I know this. And this is part of this. And this is a small step in this, incredibly complex, structure I have in my brain, which I've studied in NVC or whatever it is, restorative justice. And God help you if you threaten any of those hard-won paradigms. So I think that we look to, like I was looking like the empathy circle, how it fits in there, why it's important. It's like getting water or exercise. Athletes still do basic like running exercises and push-ups, even though they might be very, skilled and specified. And then also looking to take the empathy circle as a tool, you don't have to do the empathy circle for that. It can be used as a check-in or a check-out as a good thing. The various ways it can be used. So it's flexible, but it's always itself in a way. And I think that's the genius of what you've created there, is that it's a standalone, but it can be plugged into a lot of places. And then this all goes to the fact that what we're uncovering is this wonderland that we have within ourselves, this culture of empathy. This exists within ourselves. There's a need for it. And I could wax poetic more than that, but that's my big finish. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Right. So do we want to comment? We didn't comment on Lou's. Do we want to just everyone share, or just wondering what
Sure.
Share first and then comment?
So I really like what you've done, Bill. I actually reviewed it before we got on and meant to actually mention that when I was speaking before.
Oh, thanks.
Yes. So, I mean, I would, I might change a word here or there. In the way you phrase things, but I think the things that you've laid out there, and I like the idea of like the broad stuff, and then what does that mean for an actual person? From the bottom up. I think that's really good. So I like very much what you've done. I think it's great.
Thanks. Yeah, and just to let everybody, when I throw things out, a lot of times, like I use biosphere, I'll throw things out just to get the idea out. But I'm not attached, so it will be in raw. I consider it in raw form too.
Yeah, I appreciate the going into the getting more and more nuanced. I think that's what we're trying to do here. So it's feels good to start seeing the nuances and the articulation. So I feel excited about that. Okay. Do you want to say anything, Carolina, or do you want to go next? Or
I would prefer to speak last.
Okay.
If I may.
Sure. Then let me bring this up here. Okay. So I just going to review a little bit here. These were the principles, we had, and there was a second version here. I've been adding a couple more as we've gone along. And then there's sort of that's just the principles by themselves. And then there's sort of a comparison that, for example, we had mutual responsibility here, and there's blame and shame to mutual responsibility. So that's sort of definitions as a contrast. And I created this poll on the Facebook group. Let me actually go into it. That and I put all those different topics into the poll, and just kind of checking, like, what do people think about it? So which ones, so the people can add more. And so you can see we had, so far the most popular is moving from competition to collaboration, which was actually a new kind of a thing that came up. Moving from separation to integration, moving from blame and shame to mutual responsibility. So the mutual responsibility was like a recent thing. I don't know how I came across that, but it's similar to, with Dominic Barter's restorative circles, that you had this, I don't know if it was there that I thought of it, remembered it, just that everyone has responsibility for the situation, instead of the blaming and shaming the other person, that, well, I have a role in the responsibility. And actually quite a few people, it's like 19, that's like the third most popular topic. So there's other ones here, and just kind of seeing what, which principles or values, other people, just sort of value, rate, I guess, in importance. And so anyway, that's out there, just another, data point, another resource. Let's see. So, and that's kind of an ongoing, and we're going to be talking this Friday. We have the empathy circle. It's going to be sort of an open discussion about what do you see as the values of a culture of empathy. So it's sort of a gateway in preparation for anyone that wants to join us. Okay, so my values, my thing here, I did add another, the empathy definition, sensitively feeling into, just that it's in terms of empathy, there's people are kind of using the word differently, and there's just so much confusion that even having a shared definition of empathy and clarity around that, I think, is important. So I did just add that. So it would be helpful to have a clear basic definition of empathy and a culture of empathy. There are different ways the word empathy is used, and this causes a lot of confusion about what we're talking about. So for the definition of empathy, I go back to the initial coining of the word as feeling into. It's from the German, einfühlen, to feel into. And it puts a premium, it focuses on the felt experience. And so it means to sensitively feel into our own felt experience in our body, which is self-empathy, you know, feeling into our own and feeling and feel into the feelings of others. And I think this can all be written kind of, you know, more accessible. This is based on the definition that Carl Rogers used, being present and sensing into moment by moment the changing feelings and experiences of another, and doing this without judgment. So that was just kind of the beginning of, you know, just setting this up in terms of having the definition of empathy, and also the kind of trying to bring in felt experience, like the feelings, like more defining things within feelings. So, and this is repeating what I had last time. So at the core, people have a common humanity. So common humanity being one of the principles or values. At the core, people have a common humanity of shared feelings, desires, and needs. We may not initially sense that, but if we listen to each other long enough, we can sense and feel others' feelings and see how we can have those feelings as well. Over time, it becomes a knowing of this truth that under the surface, people have these same feelings. And there was just somebody complained about that, say in Northwestern, it is a Northwestern, right. I think Carolina mentioned that it was the North versus the South. And we talked about it last time, and she was still going to research more into what that really meant, kind of the criticisms that some people in the global South had of that term, common humanity. So that was just a note there. There's the mutuality of empathy. Empathy is often seen as from an individualistic point of view, i.e. you as an individual can have different levels of empathy or need empathy. A culture of empathy takes this individualistic view and holds the awareness of mutual empathy. So what is the level of empathy, you know, in this community as sort of a whole? What is the mutual, everybody empathizing with each other? And there was that, I had sent out an email message. I don't know if I sent it to you, Lou, but there's a women's studies program at Wellesley University, and they had talked about this mutual empathy. And this was just some definitions that they had about mutual empathy. So an openness to being affected by and affecting another person. In mutual empathy, both people move with a sense of mutual respect and intention for mutual growth and increasing capacity for connectedness. For mutual empathy to lead to growth, both people must know and feel that they are being responded to, having an impact and mattering to each other. They talk about affective and cognitive, which I'm not too happy about, but it leads to a large sense of community, supports vulnerability, a feeling of one's vulnerability, and not being taken advantage of or violated is necessary for mutual empathy. So they actually have a lot of material and have done some real work on this. This is there's a link to that article, I think there. Relationality and awareness and a value that we are in relationship with each other, with ourselves and with others in the environment. So that environmental aspect that Bill's talking about. We look at the level of empathy within the relationship as well as each individual. So again, not just seeing this, I see that all the time, that there's this individualistic empathy, like you as an individual, but it's only seen sort of through the eyes of the individual. And there's not sort of a perspective, kind of the larger sort of system, cultural. And that, I think, is what the relational refers to. We work to raise the overall level of empathy within the relationship. And then there's that mutual openness and transparency, you know, that's a core value. If we want to be able to feel into each other's felt experience, that, you know, the more open and transparent we are, the better we can do that. And, you know, things like fear, et cetera, are going to be blocking that. There's the aspect of the power with, you know, it's that how do we kind of make decisions where we negotiate, we listen to and dialogue with each other, and sort of the agreements come to everyone's satisfaction versus power over, where one side suppresses and beats up and dominates the other. Kind of like at Christmas, my brother's kids are kind of like that. They just beat each other up all the time. So
mutually,
but
at least it's mutual.
It's mutual. They're all agreeing in terms of let's beat each other up, and they're all crying, mutually crying and pouting, and it's a terrible mess.
Is it a mutual hate?
It's they don't know what else to do.
Right.
Like, they just don't know another way. Right. And there's also kind of this aspect of, it's almost like a sense of connection for them. They don't know how to just have a constructive connection and sort of enjoy it. You know, it's if you try to get to have them do an empathy circle, they get all impatient. Like, I
so they connect in only way they know.
In a sense,
right.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
And the dynamics that the parents have set up for them, you know, so. Yeah, versus, you know, power with, which, you know, if they would kind of like sit and talk with each other and come to a shared constructive, you know, relationship. So, and that mutually integrative, where there's sort of this integration of feelings. Well, you're feeling this, I'm feeling this, and back and forth. So that integrativeness. So almost there, like I'm taking a lot of time here.
Actually, can I say something before we get too far away from what was just said?
Yeah.
So one of the, this kind of goes back to one of the risks or one of the limits of trying to define a culture of empathy, is that what people experience as empathic or connecting can be so different in different cultures. So you might actually have a culture where, you know, fighting with each other is their way of connecting. And one person could look at that and say, well, that's sick. You know, that's not connecting. That's really awful. They're hurting each other.
Yeah.
And that actually could be true. That might be true. But it could also be true that this is their style of interacting with each other. And they actually experience it as connecting. There's enough trust there that they can do that. And they know that they're not actually trying to hurt each other. And so the rules or what people in a particular culture understand as connecting or not can be really different. And it's hard to, that's important for us to remember.
Right. It's just that we went with a walk with my nephews and nieces, and my, you know, older nephew is fighting with my niece. And then so she hit him with the sweater and whacked him with the zipper over the head. And he's laying on the ground kind of like crying. And then the parents are getting all pissed off with her. Then she gets sent to the timeout. And
yes, and that doesn't sound like that. And I'm not claiming I know what's going on there. I'm just, what the discussion reminded me of is that cultures are really different, and something that looks disconnecting to some people can be connecting to other people.
Yeah.
But the universality there is the need to connect.
Yes.
Because I'll even take it a step further. I mean, you know, with working the population that I had, there were a lot of kids who would do what we call negative attention seeking. In other words, they would deliberately, they would deliberately act out or get punished or something because any kind of interaction was better than no kind of interaction. And I think that's an important a need that we should address.
Yeah.
And I think it might be seeking for interaction with parents, actually.
Right. Yeah.
So it seems like there's a more nuance, is, you know, in terms of explaining this. Like if connecting comes through, you know, through these negative, you know, fighting and all these sort of echoes of almost like dysfunction, you know, there's like a deeper, there's sort of a deeper principle underneath it. You know, I think that the culture of empathy is the deeper listening, you know, that space of connecting. Yeah, it's connecting through mutual listening versus through that competition and dominance. I mean, there's people too who like being dominated, right? I guess they, so yeah,
Even
it gets
that
complicated. So yeah.
it does, but even that is really about empathy and listening. You know, you know, I actually, I had a good friend who lived with a few sex workers and things like that. Very nice people, and they ran S&M, and you know, it's kind of like you know, dungeons or whatever. Not my kind of thing.
Right.
But a lot of that is talking. Like a lot of powerful men want to be dominated and stuff like that. And really, the trick, as they explained to me, is really listening to the person and giving them the experience that they want, and really listening in. So that's very interesting, but it's still about communication.
Yeah, it seems like there's some things there to sort of unpack, you know, some deeper insights that
Yeah, well, the need for connection.
Yeah, the underlying need for, so it's sort of an empathic or a constructive or a something,
right,
you know, type of, it's the type of connection that we're sort of advocating for, the type of connection. So
right, the empathy allows you to experience that connection without the beatings or the whining or the zipper in the head and the other thing.
Yeah. And it's like with the empathy circle with Sam Vaknin, the narcissistic psychopath that I did, where, you know, he wants his narcissistic supply, but doing an empathy circle, we were actually having a very positive, constructive connection versus how he usually does it. So, okay, so the other thing I had was willingness to dialogue with everyone. I see it as a principle, because it's so many, you know, times I'm just getting these people to say, I don't want to talk with the other side on the political side because I don't want to give them attention. You know, I don't want to, and all this kind of stuff. And we kind of talked about that last time. There was some a little bit of disagreement about that, but that can go, all these things can be gone into more depth and articulated better. And then there was imaginative empathy. So this was tying in a bit with the definition of empathy. You know, I'm seeing an empathy where I can feel into myself, I can feel into others. And imaginative empathy is that role playing that it's sort of like Lou, where, you know, if you do a restorative circle and somebody takes on the role of someone, like being like the father, let's say, is not there, someone takes on the role, it's really, you sort of imagine being that person, you sort of speak from the kind of the parameters you're given, and you feel into yourself and you relate to others. And it's like another step to sort of this perspective taking. And sometimes they call it, you know, the academics call it cognitive empathy, even though that's a bit of a mess. People use that term differently. I just like the word imaginative empathy, so it kind of ties in with definitions again as a kind of the next level of so it should actually go up next to definitions, this term. And I just had systemic awareness, so it's seeing the system, which is a bit like the biosphere. You know, it's just seeing the whole culture, the whole system we live in, the cars, the way houses are built, everything else, the whole system, present, staying present versus withdrawal. And then it just had added the, you know, mutual responsibility and collaboration, because those were two new sort of principles that came up from taking that poll, after creating that poll, those are two new things. So that's kind of where I was.
Well, there's a lot of stuff there. I like almost all of it. I think different parts of it for me, belong in, how you actually pursue empathy or practices versus principles or values. I think one of the things I think is important, one of the dangers of trying to define this all, and explain it, is that framework will be used to demand people be empathic, because there's all this benefit from it and good justification for doing it, and how society will be better if everyone does this, and so then it'll be used as a cudgel to kind of say, well, people should do this, and rather than an invitation into empathy. And so I think, that's just something I'm really conscious of. Empathy is not something you can demand from another person. So that's something I'm always on the lookout for in language. Or how something is used.
Right? I think that's right. Demanding empathy versus an invitation to empathy. It's for me, it's a sort of an unresolved thing. So if I think of nonviolent direct action, right, it's kind of like saying, with Kingian nonviolence. So it's like, oh, you can go to the white supremacist, the whole system is set up in this anti-empathy domination sort of a framework, right? In the South, you can't vote, try to vote, we're going to kill you, kind of thing. And you can say, oh, can we please have more empathy here, as blacks or whatever. I mean, you end up being lynched, right? So there is this aspect of the power, and I don't have quite the solution, but I think it's great that it's just named, and we can, kind of look at it. And because I do think that the culture is kind of like not going to sort of give up the power structure that it has if we want to shift to a culture of empathy. So the quality of demanding, doing a nonviolent direct action, saying, hey, because I always imagine, setting up on the Capitol Mall, empathy tents are there. We demand that the political left and right dialogue with each other. We just, for democracy to work, people need to talk to each other. And this is like leading towards, really bad outcomes. I mean, Syria is, the extreme of when people don't talk to each other. And so there is an assertiveness and a sort of a demand there that, and how to navigate that in a way that I'm not quite sure, but I think it's an important thing to talk about and kind of explore. Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, I want to. I agree with. I like what you're saying. I agree with Lou's. Evaluation about certain things would be put in different places. Some of the things would be redundant or could be, So, but I like them. And then about this last part, I'm sort of like, I'm very happy of where we are with that because I feel that we have to make a strong demand. Yeah, this is good for you. This is like running, or this is like, for me paddling or whatever. If somebody said, just something like that, or breathing or eating right or something like that. On the other hand, I agree at some point you become a Nazi. And so I really like Lou's, I trust Lou to hold the line on that. I do. I mean, that's part of what we're, and I hopefully as we kind of do this, that's what empathy does, is that I may feel this urge, from my perspective to go forward, but I trust that Lou is getting some information, and I trust Lou that I might not be getting, and I trust that conduit, and then that makes me a broader person. because I'm incorporating what Lou's saying, rather questioning myself. It's fine, So those are my first things. So I would be more kind of energetically with Edwin as far as like demanding, but then also I think it's a discussion, and I think we need Lou's sort of perspective on it too, to really make it effective. Make a strong argument without it being a demand or dogmatic, it's rigid. That's it.
Well, with Kingian nonviolence, it was the way I see it, as I understood it, it's always you start with an invitation to a dialogue. It's like you go, okay, Birmingham officials, we would really like to be able to shop in the stores that we, like everyone else, we don't want to be using the whites only bathrooms and drinking fountains or whatever. And it starts with an invitation to dialogue about it. And then, as I understand the process, it ends, all the nonviolent direct action is meant towards bringing people to the table so that you can talk about it, and so you're having that dialogue in the end, sort of in making the decision. So, so that's, and I kind of struggle with, like, how do you navigate that in not being the Nazi, I guess.
And my understanding of it is that, in a situation where you have a power differential, you can invite someone into a conversation. You could say, this is a problem, and here's the problem, and people are being hurt by this, or this is not fair, and so we want to talk about it. And where there's a big power differential, the person on the other side who has more power can just say, well, okay. I don't need to listen to this. I don't have to.
Right.
And so the idea behind direct action is to bring the power of the people, assuming a large number of people are being affected, bringing that forward to help equalize the power differential. And those people coming forward saying, this matters to us and we think it's important and something should be done about it. And now if you do that non-violently, then the people who are protesting or whatever are seen as human beings, and force is not used against them, and so then some kind of change happens. If it becomes violent, then it's like, well, this is dangerous, we need to repress this, and the other side is justified in using violence to put it down because it's dangerous. So that's really kind of the power behind why you want to do it nonviolently, because then the people who are objecting are seen as human beings, not as some evil, dangerous force. That's on a large scale. I think on a smaller scale, the way you create transformation is by, the reason injustice happens is because one person treats the other person as an other, like they're outside the circle of people who should be cared for. And so by humanizing yourself to that person, by taking actions that help see you as a human being, not as an other, then you can transform the way that they look at you. And whatever you're asking for in terms of being treated like a human being, they're more likely to agree to it or be transformed in the way that they're seeing you. That's my understanding of the effectiveness and the power of nonviolence, why you would want to do it, as opposed to just trying to force the other like, okay, I don't like that you're oppressing me, and you know what? I can figure out a way of amassing enough power that you have to, that I'm going to force you to do it my way. And that's actually not nonviolence. That's just perpetuating the cycle of violence. We're saying, I'm just going to work to amass enough power that I can overpower you and make you do it my way.
Yeah, but what the first way is inviting the people in the power to have a dialogue, as I understand it. It's like, that is the intention. My intention is merely to have a dialogue. I don't know where this dialogue is going to go.
Correct.
And I'm willing to hold all of your concerns and your needs
Correct.
But also I want to be able to share mine, and can we hear each other around that? And there's something about that I don't know, there's a quality of assertiveness within that too, that it is a certain mindset that's, different. And, if you're in an authoritarian environment and you try doing that, I mean, you might pay some pretty high,
right,
costs for even holding that and holding that mindset and that awareness when the others don't want it. And
I think again, I think that depends a lot on you're right. I'm sure there are situations where the people who have more power, they don't give a shit.
right,
and it doesn't matter how you come to them. They're going to say, I don't have to listen to you. But in other situations where depending on how you come, like if you come with a lot of judgment and you come with a lot of preconceived, like I figured this out and you're definitely wrong and you're a monster and you're, and I'm going to make trouble for you. I'm going to make you sorry that you don't listen to me. If you come with that attitude, then the natural reaction for that is to fight against that and say, and basically saying, I'm not going to accept your judgments of me. This is what goes on either consciously or unconsciously. I'm not willing to accept your judgments of me. You don't understand me at all. And I'm going to fight you. Fuck you.
Yeah, so I
just remembered we're recording this.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't want to just keep on this. You want to go next, Carolina? This is a really great topic. It's almost like a whole couple of empathy circles just on this one topic, because I see it as sort of how do we do direct action towards a culture of empathy. I kind of feel like the culture itself is unlikely to shift the way things are going without some kind of a commitment, sort of like, people standing up for these values.
I want to say one more thing, which has to do with the firmness that both you and Bill are talking about. So for me, where the firmness is in not letting go of my own dignity and my own needs. So yes, I want to understand the needs of the other person, and I want to try to work for a solution that solves the problem and meets all of our needs. And my needs in that situation are important too. So that's where I would be firm, is in not letting go of the needs that are important to me. But that doesn't mean I can do that and still come with love or a curiosity and a desire to understand the other person, because they are doing what they are doing for a reason. They're trying to meet some need of their own. And what they're doing makes sense to them from their point of view. And I want to understand that. And I want to make sure that need is taken care of also.
Yeah. I agree. That's
And I mean, it's hard to say, because I think your point's well taken though. But we talk about, and I'm not totally down with the Gandhi Kingian, just structure, because I think that we live in kind of a different society, and I think that we're talking about tremendous disparities in power, and people who just don't want to talk. So, for instance, yes, they demanded, and then they got they forced the white people to allow them to vote. So is that cudgeling them just to that's a gray area. So I don't think so. I think that the right to vote is what's saving or will fail, because they're trying to do it again, our society. So it's a question of how those means of power then are used. And then the other thing is just like, that's why I give the example of the picking up poop in New York City. That was a societal change, and people changed their attitudes. And it wasn't, everybody was getting arrested or calling each other out, but that people's general sensitivity or general idea about it changed. And when they saw the poopless streets and they didn't have to worry about that, they said, oh, this is much better. and they continued the behavior. And that's where I think we should be. The sweet spot for empathy is sort of right in there.
Well, I think that addresses the cultural norms, which I think Lou mentioned before. You kind of create a cultural norm.
Right, exactly. I would be right down with that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's get to Carolina.
Yeah.
I'm struggling today. I'm looking. I can't kind of find the hook that will catch my attention and keep me focused on. I don't know why. Maybe this is. Maybe I'm just tired because it's evening here, and I might be simply tired. I was, but what I hear from you is my dilemma. What are our means that are our goals? I was thinking about the goal of purpose of culture of empathy. What is, I'm looking at my notes. What is the goal? What is the purpose of culture of empathy? Is it a welfare, well-being, coexistence, integrative mutuality? And I remember many weeks ago, we were talking about culture of empathy, and I said, as a problem of the system, of the current system, current civilization, and that we can't just talk about visioning culture of empathy. We need also to talk about the process of transformation from current civilization to the culture of empathy. And that's why I'm struggling with the question, what are our means, what are our methods? And I hear something like that in what you're saying, but I realize that there is one more thing we didn't name literally, is conflict. And definitely culture of empathy has to be a safe space for conflict. We do not want to avoid conflicts because there is no culture without conflict. And conflicts are part of the culture. They are inevitable. And actually, I believe that conflicts are sort of condition of evolution. It's another story. I believe that that sort of, I have my own theory of mistake in evolution. I believe that mistake and conflict are inevitable, are actually oh God, I've forgotten the word. We need them for evolution, for development. That's what I mean. So we need to create a safe space for conflict because they give us an opportunity. So, what is this opportunity? This is the safe space for conflicts is the space where opponents, enemies, can understand one another. And this is the space when every part of the conflict, every party in a conflict can grow thanks to this understanding, mutual understanding. And we can grow together in the course of this conflict resolving. So we can create a community on higher level. So the conflict plays kind of restorative function, restorative role in our culture. If we construct a safe space for conflict, for resolving conflict through empathy process, conflict will be something constructive. That's what is interesting to me, and it will be innovative. It will help to build something new. So that's my one idea, and I came back to the problem of time. I want to recall what I was talking about time. So I believe that we need to restore the value of time, and I like the term which I'm trying to invent, the human space-time, or psychological space-time, or spiritual space-time, something like we need kind of emotional space-time, and we are the current civilizations take it take this space-time from us, and we need to restore it, we need to rebuild it, because we need it to feel, to experience empathy. Without this space-time, without time, and without space-time, we can't feel, experience empathy. That's what I strongly believe. So I don't like the slogan, time is money, because time is our life. And I would even try to say that time is empathy. And in details, if we don't have time for empathy, and particularly for empathic listening, we don't have time for democracy. And here comes our system, political system you were talking about. We are busy working on material needs. We are busy to earn money. The system gives us time only to rest, regenerate from our work, and then come back to work. That's how our life is pathetic. We don't have time for real participation and inclusiveness in society. So we give up with self-governing because of lack of time. So we have our representative who make decisions for us, and we do not participate in real governing. And we give up with consensus and let the majority to impose its will on the rest of the society. It's also because of lack of time. And we give up with discussion, with thinking, with caring. We develop institutions that do that for us. So our our relatives die in hospitals far from us very often. It was very important decision for me and my father to make decision that our mother will die, my mother will die at home, not in hospital. People afraid of it. People prefer to call emergency and take the ill person to hospital, and this person dies in hospital in alien environment, because we don't have time, and we don't have a space time to deal with very strong, emotionally strong experiences. We have no capacity to manage them, to experience them. So we prefer to push them away. And we need to regain the space-time. That's very important. That's how we might be empathic again. I believe in what Bill is saying, that we need to uncover what is already in us. I truly believe that we don't need to create something new. We just need to uncover what is already in us. So those are, I think, the most important elements. There is another element I didn't elaborate, a system and structural violence that we experience now, and what the culture of empathy gives. This is about making institutional. That's what I mean. I have to elaborate that. I'm not ready to speak about it now. Okay, that's in short from me. Well, it was in short.
I was wondering about the conflict part. Is there like a principle? Like if we had a culture of empathy, would there be a term for conflict? It's like, do you know what I mean? It's like it's moving. Is it a conflict, valuing conflict, or valuing and addressing conflict? You know what I mean? It's like right now it's a term, conflict, but is there like a description of what conflict is in a culture of empathy? You know
well,
what I mean?
I understand that we have now very negative connotation with the word conflict. The problem is that conflict is part tension and disagreement. Maybe this is better term. You have to help me with English. Maybe we need to find different words for it, but mistake is kind of, well, if we understand the evolution or life as a messaging, sending information, for example, on the cell level, it's biological process of sending information from one cell to another cell, from one atom to another atom, etc. So if there is a mistake, something new is created. And that's how evolution happens. So we should be grateful for mistake and misunderstanding, because that's how something new is created. On the evolution, on the cell level, but also on the very high evolution level, which is human society, okay? The mistake is the chance of creating something new. If you would understand me exactly with my intention and my will, you would be just a copy of me. But you are not. What I'm saying, you understand a little bit differently from what I was saying. And that's how something new is created. Sometimes it creates a conflict. But if we understand and embrace this amazing element of misunderstanding, mistake, it will help us to use this feature for good. I'm not sure if I'm clear in what I'm saying.
Well, one thing that came up for me is that, you know, as sort of like a one-sentence visioning, which relates to common humanity, is that a culture of empathy sees no others. There are no others. And so that was one thing. And then so then that sort of takes out the issue. So, and then we talk about dialogue or misunderstanding versus conflict. Sort of what I was feeling is that, you know, just misunderstanding, okay, you talk it out and you can maybe come up with something better. Conflict, or the negative aspects or dysfunctional aspects of conflict, is when you stop trying to solve the problem and start trying to like harm each other as a false way of thinking that would make things better.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
How you call it? False or wrong aspect of conflict?
Well, conflict is sort of like a dysfunctional aspect of a disagreement.
Dysfunctional aspect of
Or
but disagreement is not enough, because it might be not about disagreement. It might be about something that is contradiction. Somehow contradictions appear between my acting and your acting, and that creates conflict. There was no misunderstanding. There was just contradictive action. Something happened that we meet with different will, different desire, different goals, and we have to resolve this moment. It also creates conflict. I really would like to take this negative connotation from the word conflict. I don't know how to do that, but I strongly believe we should do something with that.
So the way I've heard it expressed is, conflict is inevitable, violence is not.
Yes.
So, conflict is natural. People have different desires. People have different desires in the moment. So we all have the same basic human desires that operate within us, but in any given moment, we might have desire for different things. I might be in the mood to play. You might be in the mood to sleep, or whatever. Yeah. And so that's a conflict. Now, whether we solve that by how do we deal with conflict? Do we deal with it in an empathic way where we try to understand each other, what each other is desiring, and then we try to find, is there a solution that can meet both of our needs right now? Or maybe we meet some of mine now and some of yours later, or sometimes the needs can't be met. And so then we, at least if we understand that the other person cares about our needs and understands our needs, even if they can't be met, that's a little easier to accept. And if the other person is saying, well, you're just oversensitive, or that you have a problem, or you're just stupid, or, some way of discounting us, and
it's violence, verbal violence.
Correct. And then saying, I don't have to listen to you. I'm walking away.
So can we name this opposition as an opposition between violent dealing with the conflict and empathic dealing with conflict, or empathic resolving conflict? So it's like violence and empathy.
Yeah, I mean, one of
the
things I said in my statement was, in a culture of empathy, people respond to differences and conflict with the desire and skills to pursue understanding and create solutions that work for everybody. So I tried to embody that in what I said there. Probably to be true, but and there could be more explicit statements about conflict and dealing with conflict. I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I'd written it as so there's negative connotations of conflict: suppressing, hiding, avoiding, escalating to violence, moving towards embracing, celebrating, having gratitude for, understanding, working for solutions of conflict. So those are sort of the things I was hearing.
I was thinking earlier about mutuality and this element of blaming and shaming. I don't like blaming and shaming, and I don't like accusation of blaming and shaming, because when somebody says something, for example, I don't know, criticize or make any statement that is disagree with something, and somebody else accuse me, for example, of blaming and shaming, this person is actually blaming and shaming me. So I don't like this expression very much, really. So it's like all this stuff with very popular stuff of political correctness that doesn't really work well, I think. And kind of covers the problem, because somebody who is accused of blaming and shaming actually might show a problem.
Mm-hmm. What I see here is as a movement against labeling, because labeling.
That's better.
Well, you know, just throwing it in there. No, I think this is all very fruitful. I think conflict is definitely, if we're going to write anything or something like that, I think conflict is a major issue, and it's also a major source of creativity, which I agree with you with. And you know, just seeing that, yeah.
I mean, what we're all describing is the things that people do other than have an empathic response to what's going on. People do lots of different things,
right?
Other than having an empathic response. And some, you know, we also need to have empathy for people that don't have the inner resources to respond empathically in the moment to something that's happening.
No, believe
that
me.
also needs an empathic response.
It's called my job. Or was my job. Yeah. No, I agree. You know, looking at it differently, you know, just seeing that and transforming that.
Right. And that's the kind of the tragedy, is that often people who are in difficult situations don't have the inner resources to respond empathically. You know, they don't have the consciousness or the skills, or you may have the consciousness and skills and just not have those being present in the moment because of what's happening. You get triggered or stimulated or outraged or whatever. Yeah. So,
you know, that's my anarchistic nature, probably. I don't really believe in educating people. Just, I mean, traditional educating, but educating through practice, yeah, but not just, you know, schooling. I don't really believe in it. People always say, oh, we have this and that problem. Let's put it in a school so maybe children will understand, and when they grown up, the world will be different. I don't really believe in it. But anyway, what Bill says and his experience with his work, people need different models of behavior, and there need to be a way to spread these different patterns of behavior, because that's it is with those children of your family, Edwin. Those children simply don't have other models how to behave, probably.
They have the model of the empathy circle, but then it's boring for them. It's like, we don't want to do this. This is no fun. It's more fun beating up on each other. There's excitement and energy, you know, thrill to it. So.
Oh, so we have another issue: how to make it energetic, if it's possible, with energy that kids have. Yeah, it might be a real problem, you know. People are young children, youngsters, children are full of energy. It might be boring for them just sitting and talking slowly.
Well, and
We should deal with it.
What Edwin's describing says to me that they were fighting not because they have a conflict, but because they're bored and they're looking for some kind of activity. Kids get into stuff all the time because they're bored.
Yeah.
They don't have something to engage in that means something to them. And so that, for adults who are around, that's the thing to think about is, you know, how can we engage in something that's more meaningful than what we're doing that seems to be that kids are not interested in.
Can sport might be empathic?
Sport, you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, to the degree, sports are great to the degree that they give kids who have a lot of energy something to engage in that is fun and feels good to their bodies and maybe has some meaning because they're building skills or they're interacting with others in a way that's interesting and fun. I mean, I played sports growing up. I love sports.
I was a sportswoman. I was professional sportswoman for years when I was young. And I hate competition now. I think that sport is a part of the violent world. I have huge problem with sport now. Olympic Games, that the tradition of Olympic Games that should stop wars for 4 years, they are kind of substitute of the war.
And yet I've heard Olympic athletes talk about what an amazing experience it is to go to the Olympics and to meet other great athletes and to connect with them. And the competition is part of it, but what's much more meaningful to them is meeting the other people and having, getting to know each other and having respect for each other as athletes and as people.
Look at this poll Edwin created. First position is competition versus cooperation. What does it tell us?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
It's just having some kind of activities that are not based on competition and win-lose. I mean, the win-lose of I wouldn't get too excited about the Olympics with Russia being banned for, a lot of their athletes being drugged up on steroids, and and if you win, you get, your life is made, right, in the Olympics, versus if you lose, you just become footnote to history kind of thing. So there's a lot of problems with that whole competitive, even though teams, so there's levels of empathy. It's not like there's no empathy. There can be a lot of empathy, but is it kind of like, can we maximize it? Are there activities we could do to, sort of, that's kind of like.
I don't have answer to my question, but I think I feel like I actually hook something right now. Can sport be empathic?
Sure.
Very serious question.
Yeah.
And probably we should answer the same question to many other activities we do every day.
But I have to say, I think it's a mistake to say that all competition is bad. I think there's a toxic kind of competition that's not good. And I think there's healthy competition, which is fine.
What kind of competition is healthy?
So when I played basketball, we competed against other teams. I didn't hate those people. I didn't, there was no animosity. It was, let's get out here and play a game. Everyone plays the best they can. Somebody wins. Okay. There's not like huge consequences for losing, like something terrible happens to your life.
Or something wonderful.
Competition is a way of challenging yourself and growing and learning.
So as long as competition is not professionalized, it's
as
healthy?
long as the consequences of it are not dire, yes, that is a form of violence. When the result of competition is something significant, then yes, that's a problem. And it can be as simple as you're in a family and you're playing Little League, and if you lose the game, your parents are upset about that. That is toxic. That's not good. If your parents are invested in you winning and you don't win, and that means there's something wrong with you or you failed in some way, that's terrible. And that is competition is framed that way in most of our cultures. So I agree that needs to change, but it is a mistake to say that all competition is inherently violent. I think that's...
Well, I play chess, and I just enjoy slowly decimating the opponent. Let him really suffer as I slowly take him and slowly corner him.
Do you hear what you say?
I do, yeah. It's the fun of the total domination and making him suffer, and then having a sense of superiority afterwards. I am so smart and intelligent.
Well, it's good that you hold that inside and you don't communicate that to your opponent.
Yeah. That's what Buddhists talk about, that as wild mind. And we all have wild mind. And you know, how we live our life is what we choose to believe or what we choose to hold on to. So you can have that and then, you know, not voice it or let it go and laugh at yourself as much as anybody else. And then that's fine. And you can still have that guilty pleasure.
What is wild mind? Where does that come from?
From Buddhism. You know, just to say, you know, all this kind of bullshit comes into your mind. I mean, it's true, right? And when you start to look at it, you did an exercise where, you know, it's like, why am I, you know, you're just walking down the street and, you know, why am I thinking of a safe falling on my head or what, you know, or like a cartoon or
Are you
something.
talking about reptilian brain?
No, I'm talking not a reptilian brain, although like something like that would be engendered in that. Just that is that we're constantly growing, evolving, and we're creative creatures. So we kind of push into every little thing. At least that's the way my mind works. And if somebody says, you know, don't think about the white elephant, you know, or whatever it is, I'm thinking about it. Not only that, but I'm thinking about the private parts of a white elephant or something. You know, whatever. You know, things I'm not proud of.
Be proud.
Right, that's right. Whatever it is, you know, and part of the exercise in the Buddhist is to recognize, accept, laugh at yourself, you know, and then make a sober decision as to what, you know, sometimes there's a little creativity there or something like that that you use, some humor or something like that. But basically, then you go on. But it allows you not to identify overly with your thoughts. You know, the thoughts come, that's sort of like natural, like grass grows, but then you still have a decision to make as to how you organize them, how you react to them.
Well, what was coming up for me was that you're talking about thoughts is the felt experience, but I do see empathy having being about, you know, about felt experience. And so it's like, I know for my nephews and nieces, I think that there's this feeling of boredom, right? There's sort of a monotone of experience. And, you know, if I'm just with I don't know how to relate maybe to family members, but if we have a game, it creates some rules and I feel, you know, I have certain feelings. And so it's sort of navigating and articulating and how do we navigate feelings is core. And I think that's the thing about empathy is the sensing into these feelings and kind of seeing the feelings beyond, you know, those feelings and going into them and kind of what happens when we do that and how do these feelings evolve and, you know, what do we do, you know, how do we sort of be, how do we, you know, feel good? I mean, it's just kind of like wanting to feel good, right? It's like, I want to feel positive and, you know, certain feelings that are sort of enjoyable or positive or, so it's like how, so anyway, just thinking about that navigating of the felt experience. That's what I really liked about our reason workshop, which I had forgot to mention, is someone in the group, Peter didn't say, hey, we want to record this and get permission. So we can't put it out because somebody objected to their vision and they didn't sign off on the, on that sense-making wormhole, you know, being recorded. But anyway, it's that whole thing about tapping into the felt experience. And that was really interesting because seeing that there's so many different types of reason. There wasn't one, at least in our group, there wasn't one reason. There was all these different reasonings, and they each had a different felt experience. You know, there was like constructive reasoning, you know, dominating reasoning, and just all, it was very kind of rich.
And that's essentially the process that the culture of empathy can support. So people, you go through these feelings, you go through these felt experiences, and then the culture of empathy is the safe place which to then experience them safely and then make a good decision, you know, to basically make it, like for instance, for kids, you know, that's why kids play the, you know, the I Spy when they're in the car, they're fighting. And then the parents say, okay, who can find a VW Bug or something like that. We used to play with my son, Punch Buggy. Do you ever play that? No? Punch Buggy?
Mm-mm.
Oh, so whenever you saw a VW, the person who saw it first gets to punch you in the arm. Probably invented by a young male, I think. And so I used to play that with my son, Punch Buggy, something like that. And that was sort of it's a way of creative tension, especially as
So we have about 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Carolina, is there more you wanted to say? We've been talking a lot.
No, I think I talk a lot too.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm looking for some sort of shape or focus, or how do we organize this? And maybe we don't get there today, but maybe, that might be the subject for the next time.
So maybe every one of us should write something about this discussion today.
Yeah, kind of a layered approach. Keep refining and.
Yes, to write something. But I would like to come back to our habit of doing empathy circle about visioning. We usually do empathy circle, and I would like to come back. Actually, I miss empathy circle a lot after holidays. But we also were visioning through empathy circle process. So I would like to come back to that.
Okay, so next time we share and then go into empathy circles.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
In some sort of organization, like, what are we going to do with this? Like,
I kind of have the sense of it's just emerging. Like, we're like, you can propose something to do with it, and like, I want to go through and kind of refine it and take it, and then share it again, and then just kind of see what emerges. Maybe if you have a request or kind of would like to offer something,
Yeah, I'd like to. I mean, what I feel now is that I feel creative tension there, and that's fine with me to leave it like that. Because when you say that, I get nervous, and it's just getting lost in the weeds, and we're going to go through, and we're going to ultra define, and how many, and so that's my own fear. That's not necessarily what's going to happen, but that's my own fear. So I'll push for more structure, and I know, and then I think the refining is good, but I think that's what I feel. We have a vision, we have a culture, we have a tool. That's what I sort of see, and how to, because really we have to be able to communicate to others, I think. So anyway, that's what I have to say.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's good to bring up everything and just keep, I appreciate you bringing that up.
You're scaring me, Edmund.
We do have the circle this Friday is on this, so it's kind of the more open public. I don't know if anybody's going to be coming, but it'll be all empathy. Circle on the topic. We can sort of continue next. Yeah, Carolina.
I was just thinking, I believe we actually trying to write the book. I know you don't like it, Edwin.
No, I agree. I totally think that this is sort of the book that Bill wants to do.
Can start.
We're doing it.
I think that we can start slowly to build our content of the book. That's what we can start working on, of the content of the book. What should be in this book? Chapter after chapter. Then we may ruin completely our vision of the content, but for now we are in the moment when everybody can see some kind of order, issue we need to talk about, and we can start writing our proposition of the content.
I see that as well, that I kind of see this as sort of turning into like some articles, maybe a book. The other interviews that I'm doing, like I'm interviewing this person, she wrote a book about the empathy edge, and actually creating corporate business cultures of empathy is part of her thing. So she has empathic leadership, empathic kind of companies. I know it
Yeah,
gets a little
not
bit into
good.
that marketing and branding. So
And branding, branding, Carolina, branding.
Uh-oh, Carolina. She's going to get the shock. Quick. Get out the respirator.
Find an anarchist.
I see it as a good thing. I get that all of you see it as a bad thing. I see it as a really good thing. Bringing, well, it sounds, I mean,
I am anarchist.
I haven't read her book, but it sounds like she is bringing the values and practice of empathy into the corporate environment. That's a good thing.
I think so, yeah. And I'm looking forward. I'm going to talk to her specifically on a culture of empathy. So all the stuff we're talking about in her book. So the interviews that I'm doing are really getting focused. Meeting with Lou Augusta, who wrote a couple of books on empathy. So we were doing some dialogue. So I wanted to bring up the culture of empathy. So really, writing that book that is Carolina and Bill is, that you're talking about.
Sure. Any structure, I call it. Yeah. Any structure where it's built. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I wanted to say that. So I think most creative process has a generating phase. So that's what we've been doing, talking, generating content, and then a synthesizing phase. And you can go through iterative cycles of that to develop something. And so, I hear that's what Bill is saying, is it time to synthesize? And Edwin may be saying, no, I think we need to generate more before we start synthesizing. And my own judgment, I think it probably is good maybe to generate a little bit more before someone tries to synthesize it. And I don't know who's going to step into that. It sounds like maybe Bill is willing to take that on, trying to synthesize what's been generated so far. And maybe different ones of us could try to synthesize different pieces. So if we're trying to come up with a statement or a vision statement, and then a set of principles, and then something else, a set of practices, something like that. So that could be three things. 3 different people could work on those things. But it probably doesn't make sense for 2 people to try to synthesize the same thing, is my thought.
Sure. Well, I just wanted to clarify is that I'm fine with the process. I think it is the kind of creative tension, and I synthesize to actually generate. So when I synthesize, then that makes things more understandable for me, and then it allows me to do that. So that's just my process. But that's part of I think the fun of this process is that I can sit what one of my teachers taught, suspended judgment, and frustration tolerance just goes on, and then we'll see what happens, and I feel trusting in everybody, so that I trust where it will end up.
Well, I find having the deadline of the Mondays, it helps me to synthesize. I got to get something together, So it does create a pressure for me, which I appreciate to, get like a paragraph written about something. So it's helpful for me for that.
In this whole process, I am a person who always, when I'm creating something, I don't know, I'm writing article or whatever, I usually delay a lot, procrastinate a lot. And I was always nervous about my procrastination habit. But then I realized that this is actually the element of the process, because my mind is working on something. And I need to process and process and process. And in some point, I got it. I know what I mean. And this is the moment when I can start writing. So I stopped being scared of my procrastination habit. Now I value it, actually, because I really see the value of the process of not being too fast, letting it develop consciously and unconsciously somewhere on the back of my mind. I feel like it's all processing itself.
Well, it sounds like we're all getting something out of it. So, I mean, it's all, so I think that's good. I am, so.
Yeah. And Carolina, I'll talk to you. Asked me about that whole objectivity and stuff. And if you want to go through it here, that's fine. Or next time.
No.
I can summarize it over Messenger for you, and then we can talk about it more if you.
And I did send that article too, because there's other people who've been thinking about some of these things, specifically these academics in Wellesley, the feminist studies. They've talked about mutual empathy, and so it kind of gives sort of an academic background to more of a relational type of empathy. So, okay, so next time, next week. Oh, wait, no.
Stop recording.
Oh, we're back to Mondays, right?
Right.